Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, theydies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you back to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio, hosted by yours truly, the superfluously stellar, fully in flux, and always astral Everett J. Blackwell. Perhaps you know of us Blackwells. We had our own mobile craze game for a little while. Old Papa Kyle Blackwell pioneered it from our dev team, Blackwell Enterprises. We called it Legends of the Shadow, Raid the Wallet, and What's that? Oh. I have been advised by my lawyers not to say anything else at this time. Forgive me, Papa Kyle. Anyway, I'm Dusklight's main and most fabulous half-dead host. My job at this fine radio station is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that I and my wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some of them will make you laugh, some of them will make you cry, and some of you will become star chasers. Not stargazers, no, that would be far simpler. Star chasers tend to fixate on any one particular star in the night sky. There's the simplest who go for Sol, our sun, the brights who go for Arcturus, the nihilists who go for dead or dying stars like Betelgeuse, and the nostalgic who go for the most definitely dead but beautifully bright and old stars like Deneb or the Eye of the Sunken King. Either way, they pick their star and begin to chase it. Now, I cannot legally tell you how they do so, only that once they lock on, they find a way there. They chase it down for its corporeal energy, the last vestiges of life still not devoured by the unceasing hunger of a black hole, become theirs. They will one day envelop the blanket of light across our universe, dear listeners, and not just chase the stars, but absorb them. Also, we have new tales to tell. They're also barred from the Sturgeon Astrological Society, as you can imagine. It's time for our next set of stories for this evening. Tonight, dear listeners, we're doing something a little bit different. It's another Dusklight double bill, but since it's a new genre, we're calling it the Dusklight Drive-In. Pretty catchy, huh? Our R&D team worked on that one all week. We'll be looking at classic Golden Age science fiction stories, sometimes with a horrific twist, in order to preserve their legacy as they become harder to find in print. We'll also be more than happy to narrate newer sci-fi shorts if they're available, but for now, we're taking a trip back in time for our two featured stories for this evening. First, A Letter from the Stars, also known as Pen Pal, by A.E. Van Vogt, written in 1950 for the Out of This World magazine. It's an epistolary tale of intrigue and trust. And that's all I'll say for now. Our second tale, The Underdweller, written by Mark E. Nolan in 1957, goes through the days and nights of the last man in Los Angeles, after aliens have come and gone, leaving something horrifying on the surface for him to contend with. Both stories are available via the Internet Archive and will be linked in the description below. If you enjoy this new segment, be sure to let us know in the comments. Special thanks must be given first to Mandy Mo for rendering yours truly in the beauteous image you see when you look at our page. And lastly, our music is provided with permission by Cryo Chamber, Envato Elements, and our channel sponsor, the Dark Somnium, with gracious thanks. Your voice for these tales is our jubilant janitor TJ Lee, all hail his janitorial wisdom, and if you enjoy these intros and want to see more, please ensure you've got notifications on and leave a comment for every video you encounter. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it. Dear Pen Pal, When I first received your letter from the Interstellar Correspondence Club, my impulse was to ignore it. The mood of one who has spent the last 70 planetary periods, years I suppose you would call them, in an Auragian prison, does not make for a pleasant exchange of letters. However, life is very boring, and so I finally settled myself to the task of writing you. Your description of Earth sounds exciting. I should like to live there for a while, and I have a suggestion in this connection, but I won't describe it till I have developed it further. You will have noticed the material on which this letter is written. It is a highly sensitive material, very thin, very flexible, and I have enclosed several sheets of it for your use. Tungsten dipped in any strong acid makes an excellent mark on it. It is important to me that you do write on it, as my fingers are too hot, literally, to hold your paper without damaging it. I'll say no more just now. It is possible you will not care to correspond with a convicted criminal, and therefore I shall leave the next move up to you. Thank you for your letter. Though you did not know its destination, it brought a moment of cheer into my drab life. Skander. Planet Aurigae 2. Dear Pen Pal, your prompt reply to my letter made me happy. I am sorry your doctor thought it excited you too much, and sorry also if I have described my predicament in such a way as to make you feel badly. I welcome your many questions, and I shall try to answer them all. You say the International Correspondence Club has no record of having sent any letters to Aurigae. That, according to them, the temperature on the second planet of the Aurigae sun is more than 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and that life is not known to exist there. Your club is right about the temperature and the letters. We have what your people would call a hot climate, but then we are not a hydrocarbon form of life, and find 500 degrees very pleasant. I must apologize for deceiving you about the way your first letter was sent to me. I didn't want to frighten you away by telling you too much at once. I could not know that you would want to hear from me. The truth is that I am a scientist, and along with the other members of my race, I have known for some centuries that there were other inhabited systems in the galaxy. Since I am allowed to experiment in my spare hours, I amused myself in attempts at communication. I developed several simple systems for breaking in on galactic communication operations, but it was not until I developed a subspace wave control that I was able to draw your letter, along with several others which I did not answer, into a cold chamber. I used the cold chamber as both a sending and receiving center, and since you were kind enough to use the material which I sent you, it was easy for me to locate your second letter among the mass of mail that accumulated at the nearest headquarters of the Interstellar Correspondence Club. How did I learn your language? After all, it is a simple one, particularly the written language seems easy. I had no difficulty with it. If you are still interested in writing me, I shall be happy to continue the correspondence. Skander, Aurigae 2. Dear Pen Pal, your enthusiasm is refreshing. You say that I failed to answer your question about how I expected to visit Earth. I confess I deliberately ignored the question, as my experiment had not yet proceeded far enough. I want you to bear with me a short time longer, and then I will be able to give you the details. You are right in saying that it would be difficult for a being who lives at a temperature of 500 degrees Fahrenheit to mingle freely with the people of Earth. This was never my intention, so please relieve your mind. However, let us drop that subject for the time being. I appreciate the delicate way in which you approach the subject of my imprisonment, but it is quite unnecessary. I performed forbidden experiments upon my body in a way that was deemed to be dangerous to the public welfare. For instance, among other things, I once lowered my surface temperature to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and so shortened the radioactive cycle time of my surroundings. This caused an unexpected break in the normal person-to-person energy flow in the city where I lived, and so charges were laid against me. I have 30 more years to serve. It would be pleasant to leave my body behind and tour the universe, but as I said, I'll discuss that later. I wouldn't say that we're a superior race. We have certain qualities which apparently your people do not have. We live longer, not because of any discoveries we've made about ourselves, but because our bodies are built of a more enduring element. I don't know your name for it, but the atomic weight is 52.9. Author's note, a radioactive isotope of chromium. Our scientific discoveries are of the kind that would normally be made by a race with our kind of physical structure. The fact that we can work with temperatures of as high as... I don't just know how to put that, has been very helpful in the development of the subspace energies, which are extremely hot and require delicate adjustments. In the later stages, these adjustments can be made by machinery, but in the development, the work must be done by hand. I put that word in quotes because we have no hands in the same way that you have. I am enclosing a photographic plate, properly cooled and chemicalized for your climate. I wonder if you would set it up and take a picture of yourself. All you have to do is arrange it properly on the basis of the laws of light. That is, light travels in straight lines, so stand in front of it, and when you are ready, think ready. The picture will be automatically taken. Would you do this for me? If you are interested, I will also send you a picture of myself, though I must warn you, my appearance will probably shock you. Sincerely, Skander. Origay 2. Dear Pen Pal, just a brief note in answer to your question. It is not necessary to put the plate into a camera. You describe this as a dark box. The plate will take the picture when you think ready. I assure you, it will not be flooded with light. Skander, Planet Origay. Dear Pen Pal, you say that while you were waiting for the answer to my last letter, you showed the photographic plate to one of the doctors at the hospital. I cannot picture what you mean by doctor or hospital, but let that pass. And he took the problem up with the government authorities. Problem? I don't understand. I thought we were having a pleasant correspondence, private and personal. I shall certainly appreciate your sending that picture of yourself. Skander, Origay 2. Dear Pen Pal, I assure you I am not annoyed at your action. It merely puzzled me, and I am sorry the plate has not yet been given back to you. Knowing what governments are, I can imagine that it will not be returned to you for some time, so I am taking the liberty of enclosing another plate. I cannot imagine why you should have been warned against continuing this correspondence. What do they expect me to do? Eat you up at long distance? I'm sorry, but I don't like hydrogen in my diet. In any event, I would like your picture as a memento of our friendship, and I will send you mine as soon as I have received yours. You may keep it or throw it away or give it to your governmental authorities, but at least I will have the knowledge that I've given a fair exchange. With all the best wishes, Skander, Origay 2. Dear Pen Pal, your last letter was so long in coming that I thought you had decided to break off the correspondence. I was sorry to notice that you failed to enclose the photograph, puzzled by your reference to having had a relapse, and cheered by your statement that you would send it along as soon as you felt better, whatever that means. However, the important thing is that you did write, and I respect the philosophy of your club, which asks its members not to write of pessimistic matters. We all have our own problems which we regard as overshadowing the problems of others. Here I am in prison, doomed to spend the next 30 years tucked away from the mainstream of life. Even the thought is hard on my restless spirit, though I know I have a long life ahead of me after my release. In spite of your friendly letter, I won't feel that you have completely re-established contact with me until you send me the photograph. Skander, Origay 2. Dear Pen Pal, the photograph arrived. As you suggest, your appearance startled me. From your description, I thought I had mentally reconstructed your body. It just goes to show that words cannot really describe an object which one has never seen. You'll notice that I've enclosed a photograph of myself, as I promised I would. Chunky, metallic-looking chap, am I not? Very different, I'll wager, than you expected. The various races with whom we have communicated become wary of us when they discover we are highly radioactive, and that literally we are a radioactive form of life, the only such that we know of in the universe. It's been very trying to be so isolated, and, as you know, I have occasionally mentioned that I had hopes of escaping not only the deadly imprisonment to which I am being subjected, but also the body which cannot escape. Perhaps you'll be interested in hearing how far this idea has developed. The problem involved is one of exchange of personalities with someone else. Actually, it is not really an exchange in the accepted meaning of the word. It is necessary to get an impress of both individuals, of their minds and of their thoughts as well as their bodies. Since this phase is purely mechanical, it is simply a matter of taking complete photographs and of exchanging them. By complete, I mean, of course, every vibration must be registered. The next step is to make sure the two photographs are exchanged. That is, that each party has somewhere near him a complete photograph of the other. It is already too late, pen pal. I have set in motion the subspace energy interflow between the two plates, so you might as well listen on. As I have said, it is not exactly an exchange of personalities. The original personality in each individual is suppressed, literally pushed back out of the consciousness, and the image personality from the photographic plate replaces it. You will take with you a complete memory of your life on Earth, and I will take along memory of my life on Origay. Simultaneously, the memory of the receiving body will be blurrily at our disposal. A part of us will always be pushing up, striving to regain consciousness, but always lacking the strength to succeed. As soon as I grow tired of Earth, I will exchange bodies in the same way with a member of some other race. 30 years hence, I will be ready to reclaim my body, and you can then have whatever body I last happened to occupy. This should be a very happy arrangement for us both. You, with your short life expectancy, will have outlived all your contemporaries and will have had an interesting experience. I admit I expect to have the better of the exchange, but now, enough of the explanation. By the time you read this part of the letter, it will be me reading it, not you. But if any part of you is still aware, so long for now, pen pal. It's been nice having all those letters from you. I shall write you from time to time to let you know how things are going with my tour. Ever yours, Skander, Origay 2. Dear pen pal, thanks a lot for forcing the issue. For a long time I hesitated about letting you play such a trick on yourself. You see, the government scientists analysed the nature of that first photographic plate you sent me, so the final decision was really up to me. I decided that anyone as eager as you were to put one over should be allowed to succeed. Now I know I didn't have to feel sorry for you. Your plan to conquer Earth wouldn't have gotten anywhere, but the fact that you had the idea ends the need for sympathy. By this time, you will have realized for yourself that a man who has been paralyzed since birth and is subject to heart attacks cannot expect a long lifespan. I am happy to tell you that your once lonely pen pal is enjoying himself, and I am happy to sign myself with a name to which I expect to become accustomed. Skander, Origay 2. In the waiting, windless dark, Louis Stillman pressed into the building front shadows along Wilshire Boulevard. Breathing softly, the automatic poised and ready in his hand, he advanced with animal stealth toward Western, gliding over the night-cool concrete, past ravaged clothing shops, drug and 10-cent stores, their windows shattered, their doors ajar and swinging. The city of Los Angeles, painted in cold moonlight, was an immense graveyard. The tall, white tombstone buildings thrust up from the silent pavement, shadow-carved and lonely. Overturned metal corpses of trucks, buses, and automobiles littered the streets. He paused under the wide marquee of the Fox Wiltern. Above his head, rows of splintered display bulbs gaped, sharp glass teeth and wooden jaws. Louis Stillman felt as though they might drop at any moment to pierce his body. 4 more blocks to cover. His destination? A small corner delicatessen 4 blocks south of Wilshire, on Western. Tonight he intended bypassing the larger stores like Safeway or Thrifty Mart, With their available supplies of exotic foods, a smaller grocery was far more likely to have what he needed. He was finding it more and more difficult to locate basic foodstuffs. In the big supermarkets, only the more exotic and highly spiced canned and bottled goods remained, and he was sick of caviar and oysters. Crossing Western, he had almost reached the far curb when he saw some of them. He dropped immediately to his knees behind the rusting bulk of an Olds 88. The rear door on his side was open, and he cautiously eased himself into the back seat of the deserted car. Releasing the safety catch on the automatic, he peered through the cracked window at 6 or 7 of them as they moved toward him along the street. God, had he been seen? He couldn't be sure. Perhaps they were aware of his position. He should have remained on the open street where he'd have a running chance. Perhaps, if his aim were true, he could kill most of them. But even with its silencer, the gun would be heard and more of them would come. He dared not fire until he was certain they discovered him. They came closer, their small, dark bodies crowding the walk, 6 of them chattering, leaping, cruel mouths open, eyes glittering under the moon. Closer. The shrill pipings increased, rose in volume. Closer. Now he could make out their sharp teeth and matted hair. Only a few feet from the car. His hand was moist on the handle of the automatic. His heart thundered against his chest. Seconds away. Now. Louis Stillman fell heavily back against the dusty seat cushion, the gun loose in his trembling hand. They had passed by. They had missed him. Their thin pipings diminished, grew faint with distance. The tomb silence of late night settled around him. The delicatessen proved a real windfall. The shelves were relatively untouched, and he had a wide choice of tinned goods. He found an empty cardboard box and hastily began to transfer the cans from the shelf nearest him. A noise from behind. A padding, scraping sound. Louis Stillman whirled around, the automatic ready. A huge mongrel dog faced him, growling deep in its throat, 4 legs braced for assault. The blunt ears were laid flat along the short-haired skull, and a thin trickle of saliva seeped from the killing jaws. The beast's powerful chest muscles were bunched for the spring when Stillman acted. The gun, he knew, was useless. The shots would be heard. Therefore, with the full strength of his left arm, he hurled a heavy can at the dog's head. The stunned animal staggered under the blow, legs buckling. Hurriedly, Stillman gathered his supplies and made his way back to the street. How much longer can my luck hold? Louis Stillman wondered as he bolted the door. He placed the box of tinned goods on a wooden table and lit the tall lamp nearby. Its flickering orange glow illumined the narrow, low-ceilinged room as Stillman seated himself on one of the 3 chairs facing the table. Twice tonight, his mind told him. Twice you've escaped them. And they could have seen you easily on both occasions if they had been watching for you. They don't know you're alive. But when they find out... He forced his thoughts away from the scene in his mind, away from the horror. Quickly, he stood up and began to unload the box, placing the cans on a long shelf along the far side of the room. He began to think of women, of a girl named Joan, and of how much he had loved her. The world of Louis Stillman was damp and lightless. It was narrow, and its cold stone walls pressed in upon him as he moved. He had been walking for several hours. Sometimes he would run, because he knew his leg muscles must be kept strong. But he was walking now, following the thin yellow beam of his hooded lantern. He was searching. Tonight, he thought, I might find another like myself. Surely someone is down here. I'll find someone if I keep searching. I must find someone. But he knew he would not. He knew he would find only chill emptiness ahead of him in the tunnels. For 3 long years, he had been searching for another man or woman down here in this world under the city. For 3 years he had prowled the 700 miles of storm drains which threaded their way under the skin of Los Angeles like the veins in a giant's body. And he had found nothing. Nothing. Even now, after all the days and nights of search, he could not really accept the fact that he was alone, that he was the last man alive in a city of 7 million, that all the others were dead. He paused, resting his back against the cold stone. Some of them were moving over the street above his head. He listened to the sharp scuffling sounds on the pavement and swore bitterly. "Damn you," said Louis Stillman levelly. "Damn all of you." Louis Stillman was running down the long tunnels. Behind him, a tide of midget shadows washed from wall to wall. High, keening cries, doubled and tripled by echoes, rang in his ears. Claws reached for him. He felt panting breath. Like hot smoke on the back of his neck, his lungs were bursting, his entire body aflame. He looked down at his fast-pumping legs, doing their job with pistoned precision. He listened to the sharp slap of his heels against the floor of the tunnel, and he thought, "I might die at any moment, but my legs will escape. They will run on down the endless drains and never be caught. They move so fast while my heavy, awkward upper body rocks and sways above them, slowing them down, tiring them, making them angry. Oh, how my legs must hate me. I must be clever and humor them, beg them to take me along to safely. How well they run, how sleek and fine." Then he felt himself coming apart. His legs were detaching themselves from his upper body. He cried out in horror, flailing the air with his arms, beseeching them not to leave him behind. But the legs cruelly continued to unfasten themselves. In a cold surge of terror, Louis Stillman felt himself tipping, falling toward the damp floor, while his legs raced on with a wild animal life of their own. He opened his mouth, high above the insane legs, and screamed, ending the nightmare. He sat up stiffly in his cot, gasping, drenched in sweat. He drew in a long, shuddering breath and reached for a cigarette. He lit it with a trembling hand. The nightmares were getting worse. He realized that his mind was rebelling as he slept, spilling forth the bottled-up fears of the day during the night hours. He thought once more about the beginning 6 years ago, about why he was still alive, the last of his kind. The alien ships had struck Earth suddenly, without warning. Their attack had been thorough and deadly. In a matter of hours, the aliens had accomplished their clever mission, and the men and women of Earth were destroyed. A few survived, he was certain. He had never met any of them, but he was convinced they existed. Los Angeles was not the world, after all, and if he escaped, so must have others around the globe. He'd been working alone in the drains when the alien ships appeared, finishing a special job for the construction company on B Tunnel. He could still hear the weird sound of the mammoth ships and feel the intense heat of their passage. Hunger had forced him out, and overnight, he became a curiosity. The last man alive. For 3 years, he was not harmed. He worked with them, taught them many things, and tried to win their confidence. But, eventually, certain ones came to hate him, to be jealous of his relationship with the others. Luckily, he had been able to escape to the drains. That was 3 years ago, and now they had forgotten him. His later excursions to the upper level of the city had been made under cover of darkness, and he never ventured out unless his food supply dwindled. Water was provided by rain during the wet months, and by bottled liquids during the dry. He had built his one-room structure directly to the side of an overhead grating, not close enough to risk their seeing it, but close enough for light to seep in during the sunlight hours. He missed the warm feel of open sun on his body almost as much as he missed the companionship of others. But he could not think of risking himself above the drains by day. Sometimes he got insane thoughts. Sometimes, when the loneliness closed in like an immense fist and he could no longer stand the sound of his own voice, he would think of bringing one of them down with him into the drains. One at a time, they could be handled. Then he'd remember their sharp, savage eyes, their animal ferocity, and he would realize that the idea was impossible. If one of their kind disappeared, suddenly and without trace, others would certainly become suspicious, begin to search for him, and it would all be over. Louis Stillman settled back into his pillow, pulling the blankets tight about his body. He closed his eyes and tried not to listen to the distant screams, pipings, and reedy cries filtering down from the street above his head. And finally, he slept. He spent the afternoon with paper women. He lingered over the pages of some yellowed fashion magazines, looking at all the beautifully photographed models in their fine clothes. All slim and enchanting, these page women, with their cool, enticing eyes and perfect smiles, all grace and softness and glitter and swirled cloth. He touched their images with gentle fingers, stroking the tawny paper hair, as though, by some magic formula, he might imbue them with life. It was easy to imagine that these women had never really lived at all, that they were simply painted, in microscopic detail, by sly artists to give the illusion of photos. He didn't like to think about these women and how they died. That evening, Louis Stillman watched the moon, round and high and yellow in the night sky, and he thought of his father, and of the long hikes through the moonlit Maine countryside, of hunting trips and warm campfires, of the Maine woods, rich and green in summer. He thought of his father's hopes for the future, and the words of that tall, gray-haired figure came back to him. "You'll be a fine doctor, Louis. Study and work hard and you'll succeed. I know you will." He remembered the long winter evenings of study at his father's great mahogany desk, poring over medical books and journals, taking notes, sifting and re-sifting facts. He remembered one set of books in particular, Erickson's monumental 3-volume text on surgery, richly bound and stamped in gold. He had always loved these books above all others. What had gone wrong along the way? Somehow the dream had faded, the bright goal vanished and was lost. After a year of pre-med at the University of Southern California, he had given up medicine. He had become discouraged and quit college to take a laborer's job with a construction company. How ironic that this move should save his life. He'd wanted to work with his hands, to sweat and labor with the muscles of his body. He'd wanted to earn enough to marry Joan, and then, later perhaps, he would have returned to finish his courses. It all seemed so far away now. His reason for quitting, for letting his father down. Now, at this moment, an overwhelming desire gripped him. A desire to pore over Erickson's pages once again, to recreate, even for a brief moment, the comfort and happiness of his childhood. He'd seen a duplicate set on the second floor of Pipwick's bookstore in Hollywood, in their used book department, and now he knew he must go after them, bring the books back with him to the drains. It was a dangerous and foolish desire, but he knew he would obey it. Despite the risk of death, he would go after the books tonight. Tonight. One corner of Louis Stillman's room was reserved for weapons. His prize, a Thompson submachine, had been procured from the Los Angeles police arsenal. Supplementing the Thompson were 2 semi-automatic rifles, a Luger, a Colt 45, and a .22 caliber Hornet pistol equipped with a silencer. He always kept the smallest gun in a spring-clip holster beneath his armpit, but it was not his habit to carry any of the larger weapons with him into the city. On this night, however, things were different. The drains ended 2 miles short of Hollywood, which means he would be forced to cover a long and particularly hazardous stretch of ground in order to reach the bookstore. He therefore decided to take along the .30 caliber Savage rifle in addition to the small-handed weapon. "You're a fool, Louis," he told himself as he slid the oiled Savage from its leather case. "Are the books important enough to risk your life?" "Yes," another part of him replied. "They are that important. If you want a thing badly enough, and the thing is worthwhile, then you must go after it. If fear holds you like a rat in the dark, then you are worse than a coward. You betray yourself and the civilization you represent. Go out and bring the books back. Running in the chill night wind, grass, now pavement, now grass beneath his feet, ducking into shadows, moving stealthily past shops and theaters, rushing under the cold moon. Santa Monica Boulevard, then Highland, then Hollywood Boulevard, and finally, after an eternity of heartbeats, the bookstore. Pitwick's. Louis Stillman, his rifle over one shoulder, the small automatic gleaming in his hand, edged silently into the store. A paper battleground met his eyes. In the filtered moonlight, a white blanket of broken-backed volumes spilled across the entire lower floor. Stillman shuddered. He could envision them shrieking, scrabbling at the shelves, throwing books wildly across the room at one another, screaming, ripping, destroying. What of other floors? What of the medical section? He crossed the stairs, spilled pages crackling like a fall of dry leaves under his step, and sprinted up the first short flight to the mezzanine. Similar chaos. He hurried up to the second floor, stumbling, terribly afraid of what he might find. Reaching the top, his heart thudding, he squinted into the dimness. The books were undisturbed. Apparently they had tired of their game before reaching these. He slipped the rifle from his shoulder and placed it near the stairs. Dust lay thick all around him, powdering up and swirling as he moved down the narrow aisles. A damp, leathery mustiness lived in the air, an odor of mold and neglect. Louis Stillman paused before a dim hand-lettered sign, Medical Section. It was just as he remembered it. Holstering the small automatic, he struck a match, shading the flame with a cupped hand as he moved it along the rows of faded titles. Carter, Davidson, Enright, Erickson. He drew in his breath sharply. All 3 volumes, their gold stamping dust-dulled but readable, stood in tall and perfect order on the shelf. In the darkness, Louis Stillman carefully removed each volume, blowing it free of dust. At last, all 3 books were clean and solid in his hands. Well, you've done it. You've reached the books, and now they belong to you. He smiled, thinking of the moment when he would be able to sit down at the table with his treasure and linger again and again over the wondrous pages. He found an empty carton at the rear of the store and placed the books inside. Returning to the stairs, he shouldered the rifle and began his descent to the lower floor. So far, he told himself, my luck is still holding. But as Louis Stillman's foot touched the final stair, his luck ran out. The entire lower floor was alive with them. Rustling like a mass of great insects, gliding toward him, eyes gleaming in the half-light, they converged upon the stairs. They had been waiting for him. Now, suddenly, the books no longer mattered. Now only his life mattered and nothing else. He moved back against the hardwood of the stair rail, the carton of books sliding from his hands. They had stopped at the foot of the stairs. They were silent, looking up at him, the hate in their eyes. If you can reach the street, Stillman told himself, then you've still got half a chance. That means you've got to get through them to the door. All right then, move. Louis Stillman squeezed the trigger of the automatic and 3 shots echoed through the silent store. 2 of them fell under the bullets as Stillman rushed into their midst. He felt sharp nails claw at his shirt and trousers, heard the cloth ripping away in their grasp. He kept firing the small automatic into them, and 3 more dropped under the hail of bullets, shrieking in pain and surprise. The others spilled back, screaming from the door. The gun was empty. He tossed it away, swinging the heavy Savage rifle free from his shoulder as he reached the street. The night air, crisp and cool in his lungs, gave him instant hope. I could still make it, thought Stillman, as he leaped the curb and plunged across the pavement. If those shots weren't heard, then I've still got the edge. My legs are strong, I can outdistance them. Luck, however, had failed him completely on this night. Near the intersection of Hollywood Boulevard and Highland, a fresh pack of them swarmed toward him over the street. He dropped to one knee and fired into their ranks, the savage jerking in his hands. They scattered to either side. He began to run steadily down the middle of Hollywood Boulevard, using the butt of the heavy rifle like a battering ram as they came at him. As he neared Highland, 3 of them darted directly into his path. Stillman fired. One doubled over, lurching crazily into a jagged plate glass storefront. Another clawed at him as he swept around the corner to Highland. He managed to shake free. The street ahead of him was clear. Now his superior leg power would count heavily in his favor. 2 miles. Could he make it back before the others cut him off? Running, reloading, firing. Sweat soaking his shirt, rivering down his face, stinging his eyes. A mile covered. Halfway to the drains. They'd fallen back. But more of them were coming, drawn by the rifle shots pouring in from side streets, stores, and houses. His heart jarred in his body. His breath was ragged. How many of them around him? 100? 200? More coming, God! He bit down on his lower lip until the salt taste of blood was on his tongue. You can't make it, a voice inside him shouted. They'll have you in another block and you know it. He fitted the rifle to his shoulder, adjusted his aim, and fired. The long, rolling crack of the big weapon filled the night. Again and again he fired, the butt jerking into the flesh of his shoulder, the smell of powder in his nostrils. It was no use. Too many of them. Louis Stillman knew that he was going to die. The rifle was empty at last. The final bullet had been fired. He had no place to run because they were all around him, in a slowly closing circle. He looked at the ring of small, cruel faces and thought, the aliens did their job perfectly. They stopped Earth before she could reach the age of the rocket, before she could threaten planets beyond her own moon. What an immensely clever plan it had been, to destroy every human being on Earth above the age of 6, and then to leave as quickly as they had come, allowing our civilization to continue on a primitive level, knowing that Earth's back had been broken, that her survivors would revert to savagery as they grew into adulthood. Louis Stillman dropped the empty rifle at his feet and threw out his hands. Listen, he pleaded. I'm really one of you. You'll all be like me soon. Please, listen to me. But the circle tightened relentlessly around Louis Stillman, and he was screaming when the children closed in. See, this is why I never trust letters from body snatchers in outer space or killer feral children. Both are unpredictable, dangerous, and largely unwanted in my world, thank you very much. Keep both of them at arm's length, and if threatened, use proportional force. Or just put up a huge divider to keep them out, whichever comes first. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We're adding them regularly, and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of dwelling, and leave a comment with stories you'd love for my many-legged runners to find. It's time to prostrate ourselves and give special thanks to our Patreons. Our Purple Crayon Eater Mary Peck, our new janitors Alex Nunez, Feeny Von Karma, and Arkham Cookie, our Void Walker Evan Diaz, who is currently remaking the 3rd floor in a powerful beige with these reverberating patterns, and our very own Blackwell family member Papa Kyle Blackwell, sitting on his rocking chair made of bones, steel, and unfulfilled dreams, watching and waiting for the slightest hint of vulnerability before enacting his war campaign. We love you and fear you, Papa. We thank you humbly for your patronage and look to see you bright and early for the Dusklight orientation. Purple crayons and existential dread will be provided. And, one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some water. Read a book about science fiction. Eat something sweet and savory, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow with the window open and the stars twinkling down on you. Start and end each day with kindness in your heart. You matter, you are loved, and every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.